I am delighted to have our next panel discuss one of our conference themes, linking workforce to entrepreneurship. And I'm going to invite to the stage Diana Kander, Senior Fellow, Ewing, Marion, Kauffman Foundation, but probably best known for All In Startup. She will sign copies later after the panel. I also invite Dr. Jeanne Wesley, Vice President for Germanna Community College. Dr. Wesley leads Germanna's Center for Workforce and Community Education at multiple campuses through the 7-county region. And I actually think the story that Virginia was telling about an innovative workforce center was actually you, Jeanne, how you'd sort of gone into the community and sort of made these relationships, and so that was interesting. Or if not, there's someone out there like you. And then Kristine Spengler, who's the product manager of Workforce Online Experience at Intuit. Her other title is Innovation Catalyst. Hello, who doesn't want that title? Maya has a title similar to that. Maya from Houston Community College, Innovation Officer. And she does Lean Start In, and focuses on the intrapreneur within a large company. My goal for this panel is to really dialogue with you guys as thought leaders about the changing world of work. Virginia talked about it, and really get your point of view as both educators, employers, and workforce development professionals about how we ourselves, as people who live in the new world of work, can position ourselves as well as the folks that we serve. In community colleges, we traditionally see a line between workforce development and entrepreneurship. Perhaps they report to the same VP, but the workforce development focuses on training students for jobs, and entrepreneurship centers focus on launching businesses. Rarely do we see workforce development turning to startups for jobs or for training students to work in small businesses. But then I think also just as rare is that we're not teaching out of the entrepreneurship center, we're not teaching students how to be intrapreneurs in firms. But we do know that there's a changing workforce. Freelancers Union and the Alliance published a report in September stating that there were 53 million freelancers. So a full third of people employed are freelancers. It's the gig economy, it's the new world of work. And then I pulled this stat from the New World of Work website run by our compadres at Feather River, who are presenting right after in a breakout session. But the top 10 in-demand jobs today, so the top 10 jobs today, actually did not exist in 2010. So our students need to be agile, and I think we need to prepare them to be innovative employees in large companies, to be independent contractors in national firms, and we need to help them create their own jobs. But I think more importantly, they will, and we'll all need to do all three, be in a company, a contractor, and then make our own job. So I want to focus on what everyone is seeing in sort of your world and your point of view into this system. So Diana, from where you sit, do you see that students are being prepared for this new world of work, and what do you think is working and not working?
So this might be a little bit controversial, but
do it.
I think we're doing a terrible job of preparing students for the workforce, or to think in the new entrepreneurial mindset that I think is required in every business out there. And I think that the reason that we diminish entrepreneurial thinking in the classroom is twofold. The first is we teach students, rather than they have to figure things out, there's some authority figure that tells them whether their ideas are right or not. So whether it's us as educators telling them what assignments are correct or not, or if we have a business plan competition and there's some judges that they're trying to impress. In the real world, it's the customers that need to be the final arbiter, and it takes a very rare educator to say, you know what, I don't know whether this is the right answer or not. Why don't we see if you can actually sell this, or if somebody's going to buy this? So the first is setting these arbitrary authority figures that, need to be destroyed in the real world. And the second reason is we give them a series of tasks and assignments, even in entrepreneurship classes, and that's training people for the old way of being employees. And what we should be doing is saying, here's the end goal, here's where we are today, I'm here to help you if you need help, but you need to figure it out, because what we need is a workforce that figures things out. There's so many complex problems these days. So I think we're doing a terrible job. I will say that from talking to many of the folks at NACCE, I think this is probably the top echelon of educators who are intellectually curious and want to be the best of the best. So I'm certainly not talking about the majority of the people in this room, but I think as a country we're doing a terrible job.
Yeah. Kristine, you're in a technology company. Do you agree with Diana, or do you see that let me say it differently, do you see the students are being prepared to innovate and be entrepreneurial?
I actually, can you hear me? No?
I think it works now.
All right, can you hear me?
Hi.
Whatever that did. I actually agree with Diana. We work a lot with students right out of college, and I think they come in, the great thing is they come in with energy, they want to learn, they have so much enthusiasm, and what we're able to do at Intuit is take that enthusiasm and help them learn the skills to think entrepreneurially within a very large organization. I have the experience and privilege of working with a number of those students on an internship level, and what I've noticed is a lack of comfort with ambiguity. And I think that we could all say that entrepreneurialism is primarily about ambiguity. And so that's one thing that we really focus on within our team is you just have to get comfortable with ambiguity, and the way you work your way out of ambiguity is through rapid experimentation, through deep customer empathy, and really understanding what it is your customer wants. But that we don't have a rule book. Nobody knows exactly how to do things. And that I have noticed, it comes as a shock. They don't have a book to turn to give them an answer. There isn't necessarily a right or wrong answer. It's what the customer is telling us and the customer guiding us. So I tend to agree with Diana. We could do a better job. But I think the good news is that they're very ready and eager to learn. And that's encouraging to me.
I'm going to make this, just drill down on that point a little bit, because I think you're absolutely right that you have to be comfortable with ambiguity. I mean, how does anyone think that you sort of teach, facilitate, help make learn a comfort with ambiguity? Like how would that happen within a classroom or within a workforce center to be comfortable with ambiguity?
You just create more, as many opportunities as you can for ambiguity. I have a number of activities that take from 1 hour to 3 weeks where students are tasked with large challenges. So, in an hour, just leave the classroom, go make as much money as possible. There's no other, rules other than you have to come up with a business plan of what you're going to do before you leave the room. And you'll just be surprised. So many educators think that, my students can't do that. But you'll be surprised at what happens if you pretend like this is totally normal and that's what they're supposed to do. How many of them come up to the challenge and come back and be like, I made $100 in an hour. And you're like, wow, I can't believe you did that or you figured that out. They constantly surprise you, but I don't think we're challenging our students enough.
Yeah, excellent. Jeanne, you actually, I think, are also, like Diana said, sort of in the top echelon of workforce development systems within the country, really embracing the startup world. And I actually heard Jeanne speak at AACC, and I was like, you've got to come to NACCE. You're awesome. And you've got a wonderful partnership with the startup community in your local entrepreneurial system in Fredericksburg. How did you make that relationship, and what were the gaps that you saw that startups were looking for? And if you could just tell a little bit about your story, I think that's really awesome.
Sure. One of the things that we saw that entrepreneurs were looking for were skills, and that's certainly what we have to offer. We started a movement at our college called Skill Up Virginia. Mm-hmm. And we work directly with entrepreneurs in our area to identify what their needs were. Mm-hmm. And it's more than what our student needs were, it was what the entrepreneurs' needs were, because even though they had started businesses and were looking to fill jobs or looking to scale, we discovered that a lot of the people that came to our startup weekends that we were hosting or our workshops or our panels also needed skills. They needed the training. They could be fabulous gourmet peanut butter makers, or make the most fabulous app, or wonderful gaming things, and you name it. We've had every business spin out from our startup weekends that we host regularly. But they too lacked skills to be able to do what they needed to do. We started with building workshops using local entrepreneurs that were highly skilled to teach. That gave us immediate credibility. The skills that many lacked were, some of them hadn't even seen a lean canvas. We used lean canvas methodology to help them start. Customer discovery was something that they had not necessarily thought about because they had this idea that they were married to, but had yet to get out of the building and test their idea. Building a minimal viable product so they could do something on a small scale to then go out and do customer validation. Cost structuring, revenue streams, scaling your business, thinking ahead of time, am I going to make multiple exits or am I going to have a lifestyle business that's the same? And so we built 9 workshops around these principles after we had infiltrated the startup community, after we had brought meetups on campus, after we had started hosting startup weekends, after we had offered our internships to local entrepreneurs and moved out the red tape that caused some sort of, that was criteria for who our internships could work with. You know? Then we put these workshops together and worked with local entrepreneurs in building a startup ecosystem in our area, which has actually been quite successful. Before we were there and started working with our local entrepreneurs in the bars, in the coffee shops, out of the building, there were no meetups. There were no startup weekends, and we have given a place of comfort to those that are entrepreneurs in our area. And out of that, we're now working on trying to build a co-working space, and we're trying to convene the right people to begin an angel network in our area. So we hope we're doing good.
Yeah, no, Jeanne is a rock star in this area. And I think, you know, what I heard, and I know a little bit of your story more, is that one of the strategies, and I think it is replicable, you know, that we teach our entrepreneurial students or our growing businesses is to talk to your customer. And you went out of the building. Right, you actually went into those bars, you went into the wine stores, you went into the cafes, and you met with people where they were, and then through that relationship, you know, you really, you know, listened to what do they need, and sort of created this incredible Nobel Peace Prize winning ecosystem out of Fredericksburg.
We have most of our plans on napkins from bars.
Yeah. So Diana, with that, I think that Jeanne really made a good suggestion or focus on something that can be done differently at community colleges as we sort of, you know, deal with this new world of work. What are some suggestions that you have?
My suggestions are very high level. I could do tactical too, but I think high level first helps. So one, I think about entrepreneurship education as very different from other things that we teach in business classes or management classes. I think about entrepreneurship education like teaching basketball. So imagine a basketball certificate program where you spent the entire time reading about the history of basketball, interviewing basketball players, going to watch basketball games, and like this is your certificate. You were going to try out for a professional team when you graduated, and you weren't allowed to touch a ball until after you graduated the program. And that's how most programs are structured. You know, if you're having people write business plans or interview entrepreneurs, they're still not experiencing what it's like to be an entrepreneur. And entrepreneurship another way that it's similar is you can't just decide that you're going to be an entrepreneur, much like deciding to be a professional NBA basketball player. It's something that you have to experience to find out if you're even good at it or if you like it or not. And so I think our role as educators is to give them those opportunities to experience it and see if they even like it and develop the skills necessary. And the other way that I think about it, like the way that I test whether the material I'm creating is right or not is, are you making your students feel uncomfortable, and are you giving them butterflies in their stomach? Because if you're not, if they have like a very clearly defined plan of what they're supposed to do, and they're not emailing you that they're overwhelmed or uncomfortable, then you're not doing a good job. Because that's like, if you know any of the entrepreneurs in the room, like, you know, how many have had sleepless nights and have long conversations with their spouses about how hard this is? Well, if you're not giving that kind of experience to your students, then you're doing them a disservice. You're not training them to be prepared for the workforce. So those are my two gut checks. Like, think about it. If you were teaching basketball, are you giving them enough practice time? And are you giving them the butterflies in their stomach?
Kristine, what do you think that how we should be really facilitating changes on community colleges as they train, empower, facilitate this sort of next generation of workers?
There's so many answers to that question. I'm trying to think of where to start. What my gut tells me to talk about is just that a lot of times we focus on the books and the education and the even talking to customers, those skills, but sometimes we forget to tell them to follow their gut and follow their instinct. And so I think a lot about entrepreneurialism is understanding to trust your intuition combined with the work that's needed to validate and get the data to prove that your instinct is right. And I know that I have two college-age nieces. The one thing that I tell them is your gut will guide you. Follow that little voice in your head, and it will tell you where to go. And we don't necessarily give that message as much as we should. We don't empower them to trust themselves. So I think a big part of all of this is just helping them understand that they have a voice inside them that will help direct them to where they need to go. Then there's all sorts of stuff that we can layer on. And I think the biggest thing, if I had to choose anything, is what Diana said about making them feel uncomfortable. We experience that at Intuit every day, not just students, but people in general do not want to get out of their comfort zone. And so if you're not pushing them and encouraging them, almost forcing them out of the building, they won't do it. And once they do get out and they actually talk to a customer, they come back more energized than I've ever seen any group of people come back. Yeah. And that's the great thing, is that you have such confidence knowing that just do it. You'll never, ever regret this. So that pushing them out of their comfort zone, I think, is huge.
I think as you speak, you're actually training a workforce too. When it's not lean in, that's something else, but what is it, lean start in?
Lean start in.
So what is your program, and how do you identify people, and how do you execute it so that you're teaching intrapreneurship? What are the things that you do to teach intrapreneurship?
Well, we started with a set curriculum, so the lean startup curriculum. So kind of a combination between Eric Ries and Steve Blank, those two methodologies, and created a curriculum with the intention of increasing entrepreneurial thinking within the Intuit workforce. And the way that we do that is by holding 2-day events. We call them competitions, so lean starting competitions. And we take people through a series of a very short amount of curriculum where we help them understand the lean canvas, where we help them understand the difference between a hypothesis and their experiment and leap of faith assumptions. So we kind of get them a basis for understanding the terminology and where it fits in. And then we have them actually bring in a business problem that they're trying to solve. And they actually, in the 2 days, go about solving that problem. And what they learn is that no matter how much they analyze at the table or they argue with each other, they will never get the answer until they actually go out and talk to the customer, until they actually run behavioral experiments with customers, not just interviews. And at the end of all of this, we take them through 3 loops. At the end of those 3 loops, we have them package their experience into what we call a pitch. And then we have leaders within the company come in and judge of the teams that participated who exemplified the start-in or the lean principles the most closely, and they win. And there's really no prize other than the fact that they know that they did it right. And it's cool. It's a fun way to work, and that's the thing I love most about it, is that I love my job. I love what I do. I love Intuit. But I, more than anything, love to see other people get that same sense out of what they do on a day-to-day basis. So they look at their work very differently.
We've used some of the same principles for customized training because we're in workforce and therefore do a lot of work with companies. And some of the same things we're using in our entrepreneurship training and work. We hosted the Marine Intel IT group on our campus because we're near Quantico, and use some of the same principles then for the work that they were doing as far as entrepreneurship. We also were part of the coaching team with multiple agencies in our state capital when they were trying to combine agencies to learn to use big data. And they were using data from each agency. So we would go in with the exact same principles that we use in Startup Weekend and our work with our students to use it for customized training for current companies as well.
I just want to add, I teach an entrepreneurship class and I teach an intrapreneurship class, and the curriculum is identical. Like the process that you need to go through in terms of figuring out who your customer is, or who you're trying to make a change for, what the problem is, and then rapid experimentation with solutions is the same. So I think there's a lot of crossover in the curriculum that you're teaching in entrepreneurship, but it's how it applies into the workforce.
Yeah, I think, so what I've heard a lot is experience. I love the basketball, so especially as a basketball mom, very like, oh yeah, experience. And I also hear density, right? Like, it seems like 2-day event, startup weekend. There's, in some ways, and this is difficult maybe sometimes on campus because you really need those, 24 hours, continuous 24 hours to really sort of get that. And teams, we're talking about teams here too, but really making sure that you experience it. I like what you said, Diana, that your curricula for entrepreneurship and extrapreneurship is exactly the same because it's the same thing. How do you think that we prepare this workforce or our students or our incoming employees with this sense that it's a new game in workforce, that right now I could be a freelancer, but then I could actually start my own business, but one day I'll work for Intuit. Like, how do we help people get comfortable, but everyone should be uncomfortable with the idea that, I'm going to have to transform, but use sort of these principles?
So one of the new realities today is that most people don't talk about is that business models don't last as long as they have before. So, the book Built to Last, well, that is no longer the case. Now it's like, are you built to last the next 10 years? Because if you don't change something about your business model over the next 10 years, you're not going to be in business. And so I think it's really important for us to not only teach our students that that's a truthism for existing companies, but for their own personal career. You used to graduate from work and go to work for one company forever, and now I think the studies show that people graduating will have 17 jobs by the time that they retire. So I think our job is to help them understand that and help them develop skills to gain new information and continuously learn throughout their career and make it a priority. I think one of the things that sets entrepreneurs apart from everybody else is their inherent curiosity about the world. And I think one of the I don't know if we can teach this, but one of the things we should attempt to teach is helping people develop that kind of curiosity and opportunity recognition within our student base.
I think one of the things that we really need to instill is, because of this, is the product is you. That's why we wanted to emphasize skill up, because whether you go to a company for a while, it's going to change. Technology is changing constantly. Your job will, even if you stay in the same job for a matter of years, your job will change again and again. So it's inherent on you to be able to get the most skills you can, and to brand yourself individually as you are the product. What is your brand? What do you offer?
Yeah. What would you say?
Again, there's so many things to say. Where do you start?
Because folks will come to Intuit, and then maybe they come from the startup world into Intuit, and then they go out to it. But how do you, in where you sit in a large corporation, help people understand that this is a point in time and that you could be anywhere on this career path?
It's a sense of empowerment, I think, and helping people understand that. So separate from our incoming students or incoming recent graduates, even when we talk to people who have been in the workforce for years and years and years, one thing that we stress with them is that this is a paradigm shift. So there's a real distinct paradigm shift happening within the workforce, in that you have the answers. You don't necessarily need to go to your boss and say, hey, I have this idea, what do you think about it? And get their permission. That if you have the idea, then you're empowered to go out and run your experiment, get some data, and now bring that data back to your boss. And if everything proves what your assumption is, there's no reason that they would say no.
Right.
So it's a real distinct paradigm shift happening. And I think when you lay it out that way, that we're empowering you to make these decisions. We're empowering you to go out and find the answers, and nobody else is going to give them to you. You have the ability to decide what you work on. And I think it gives people that sense of empowerment, that, wow, I am the product. I have the ability to do this myself.
Right, and you could use it within Intuit, but if you find yourself contracting or find yourself starting your own business, it's the same skill. That's great.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I think I'd like to spend a minute, too, just sort of like talking about, and I feel like we almost have to have this new word that we create together. You know, intrapreneurship is such a term that's used frequently, and intrapreneur is also now a term. And so, like, what's the term that's going to get us to that it's the same thing? And, like, what's the third term that we start to put out there and that becomes a hashtag at this conference? So think on that. No, but what are the skills that we sort of see in this intrapreneurship, entrepreneurship, right? We saw comfort with ambiguity, you know, which I think people need to be continuously learning, and all of us in the audience being comfortable with ambiguity. But what are other skills that we should be thinking about to sort of train our entrepreneurs?
I saw a fantastic slide on this in the Growth Wheel presentation yesterday. So if we can get that slide up. No, I'm kidding. But it's how we've changed thinking about business, where it used to be we're trying to predicting the future and we're trying to impress opinion makers and getting some sort of funding, to today it's all about getting factual evidence to back up your assumptions, and making small bets instead of taking huge gambles to make sure that you're going in the right direction. So to me, if there was a term, it would be evidence-based decision-making or evidence-based innovation. That's how I think about these new skills.
And that's one of the topics that we particularly talk about when we're working with our students. We call it data-driven decisions. And it's not just throwing the spaghetti on the wall. It's how you make your decisions on a daily basis, and you can't do it without the data. You can't do it without the measuring. Another thing that I think that is important, and we We deal with it in our customized training. Large businesses will come to us and ask us for soft skill training.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And high-level businesses will come in, national corporations, and we expect them to say, we need you to teach us cybersecurity, we need this, and they want dealing with working in teams. They want dealing with difficult people. They want how to listen, and they also they want critical thinking and decision making, and I think that and certainly they want supervising, how to lead, and I think that we need to really concentrate on embedding this throughout our entrepreneurship programs and throughout the college, because if you don't get it then, you're going to be, for your lifelong career, it's going to stop you at some point. I think it's highly important for what we do.
Yeah, I'm going to stop you right there for a second, Jeanne, too. It's funny because Virginia and I were talking about this yesterday, soft skills, hard skills. Soft skills is like, oh, it's soft skills, but soft skills is such a critical term. Like, again, how do you rebrand that? And then also Feather River, Amy and Rajinder will be talking about these New World of Work, so I think today, but if not, find them because they talked about it yesterday. And Creator Up, they've been partnering with a video series to sort of ignite that conversation. But for you, Kristine, what do you think are sort of the entrepreneur skills that have to be taught?
Not to sound like a broken record, but it is that soft skill. And a specific example I have of that is there's we did the Herman Brain dominance inventory at a company that I worked at. And Intuit has done something very similar. But what it does is helps you understand where your predominant way of thinking and problem solving is, and then where you are in times of stress. And we rolled this out to the existing workforce, and then, including the interns and recent college graduates. And what people, you would have thought we had invented the light bulb or something, because they all of a sudden had a language to understand, oh, it's not that we disagree about this, it's that we're approaching it differently. And it was that insight and the understanding that just because I think this way doesn't mean everybody else thinks this way. And I think that was huge. It was just an amazing transformation. So that intuition, understanding that I have a lot of assumptions wrapped up in the way that I think, and that I need to challenge those assumptions, and I need to be okay with other people challenging my assumptions as well. And then on top of that, to give them the ability to think through how they're making decisions and the evidence-based decision making. The combination of those two things, I think, sets a person up for success in whatever field they do, whether it's in a big company or taking on their own startup, what have you.
Yeah, I think that makes me think about teamwork, and I think differently, right? And we have all these things, right? Like, I am a mom, I am comfortable being on stage, but not everyone is. And so how do you work with folks who are different? The one thing that I found interesting that none of you brought up was sales or pitching or how to sell, which I think is critical. I was having a conversation with Joe and Chuck and Jason at lunch about this. Like, can you teach sales how to sell? Because I think even in Intuit, even though people are empowered to bring their evidence, there's a pitch in that moment when they bring all of their evidence to their boss, right? And what does that pitch look like? And so I guess I would ask if you agree that sales is part of the entrepreneurial mindset that we should be teaching.
Can I go first? I talked about the lean starting competitions that we do, and throughout the 2 days, we break and we meet together as a group, and each member of the team, there's usually 3 or 4 people on a team, are responsible for delivering a pitch to the rest of the team, to the rest of the group, so that we understand the journey that they're going on. And then at the very end, they do a 4-minute timed pitch in which they deliver their story to the series of leaders, who then again determine who wins the competition based on following the Lean Startup principles. And that a lot of people think, oh, it's a competition. That's not really a competition. That's just, a gimmick. It's not, because at the end of the day, no matter what great research you have and no matter what great ideas you have, if you can't convey that to your leaders, to your team, to whoever you work with, it's all for naught. And so you're right. I don't necessarily think of it as sales, but it is. It's presenting your ideas in a way that somebody else can understand.
Right.
And certainly startup weekends that we work on and others, there's pitches at the beginning and at the end, and people are on stage, and we have coaches that prepare people for that. But as far as sales, and we do have people be able to say their elevator speech and things like that. But as far as sales, the thing that we emphasize is relational sales, which has to do with meeting people, communicating with people, talking to people, getting out of the building, asking their opinion, getting to know people, and that is how we function, and that is how successful entrepreneurs function. It's not somebody buy a used car going with a balloon, it's relational sales. And that again goes back to communication and the soft skills.
Just one thing to add to that, I think you're absolutely right about the type of sales changing. It's problem solving. If you can get to the root of the customer problem and then find a way to solve that problem in a scalable way, there's your answer. And so it's not so much about selling them something you think they need. Right. It's about finding out what they need and providing that for them.
Yeah, I think sales is an invaluable skill for 100% of all human beings. Like if you ever want a promotion or you want somebody to approve a project or you want a grant for something, you are in sales.
Or you want your 7th grader to do her homework.
Yes, you're in sales.
Yeah.
That's all sales. And I think one of the challenges in terms of entrepreneurship education is not to teach somebody the tactics of the different ways to sell, but the actual skills that we've actually been talking about here of customer empathy and just to stop selling and to listen. And that actually makes the best salespeople in the world.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're almost at time, and I could have this dialogue. I think maybe next year we have a whole day just for this topic. But so I also want to be conscious that we're not only teaching and facilitating students and clients who are in the new world of work, we are all in the new world of work. And so I guess if you have a sentence worth of advice for the audience who also lives in the new world of work, where they are employees, potentially independent contractors, and potentially starting their own business, how do they position themselves for that?
I'll start. I probably had the most jobs in this room. I've owned 9 companies. I had a couple of jobs, although I'm probably highly unemployable right now. Every time I take on a new experience, I think about a new set of skills that it adds to my tool belt. I think of myself as having a Batman tool belt. And whenever I look for new opportunities, I think about, is it going to add a new tool to my tool belt? And so I purposefully seek out opportunities that will give me experience in a new industry or a new skill set. And I think that's so invaluable, again, this continuous learning and being so curious about the world. I think all of us need to think about what additional skills what do I have on my tool belt, because that's what's going to make you more attractive for promotion, for employment, and it's a lot more fun to have those kinds of experiences. So.
I would say that you need to acquire the same skills that you are trying to impart to your students and those that are entrepreneurs in your area. You need to think of yourself as an independent contractor in some way, as you need to look at what is your brand. You need to get out of the building and work with the customer, and you need to become internet savvy, very digitally savvy, because that is where a lot of the work is being done by entrepreneurs and in the new world of work. If you're not on Twitter, you need to get on Twitter today.
Amen. What would you say for everyone to be really, as they think about their own role in the new world of work?
I would say to look at what you're doing as producing a product. Whoever you are and whatever you're doing, we all have a product and we all have a customer. And when you are producing something for a customer, it gives new meaning to your work. You're not just producing a report. You're not just going through the motions. You're actually creating something that you give to somebody else and provide value for them. And I know when I started getting involved with Lean and I started thinking about my work that way, it really changed how I approached things, and it changed the meaning that I got out of work. So I really think that product mindset, and you are a product manager. You are there to figure out your customer's problem and solve it for them or with them.
Excellent. Well, I hope you all join me in thanking our panel for some excellent insights. I feel that you guys really are on the cutting edge of this work, and I just feel thankful that you made time to share with us today.